The Siren by Len Durant and P.W. Pretorius. I have the only parents who always have plans for Halloween, Megan said, and pulled the phone closer to her mouth. I have never been trick-or-treating before, she whispered, and waited. Never? Megan smiled and put the phone down on her pillow, stood up, and circled over to her window, and looked towards Jason's window across the street. They had moved in about a month ago. He was immediately popular at school, and she liked him from the very first day her mom brought over a lasagna. Megan, you there? She ignored Jason for a second and stepped closer to her pillow. Never. I think they want to keep me safe. Safe from what? Megan enjoyed the torment. Perhaps a bit too much. But nothing was better than to spread fear into the heart of a new kid in town, especially if that new kid seemed gullible. She smiled at the thought that she was about to find out how much. She paused a moment and lowered her voice. I don't want to scare you, Megan said, and sighed dramatically. No, please, tell me, he replied, sounding somewhat anxious. Megan paused once more, slowly building up the tension. I shouldn't, she said, and listened to the hard breathing on the other side. Every year there is a police siren during the evening, and when you hear that siren, you know. You know what? A kid went missing. Now it was Jason that paused for a moment. That sounds way too random. Megan took her phone and switched off the speaker option, pressing it against her ear. Random, perhaps. But there has never been any police car in our neighborhood on record on Halloween night. She was enjoying it and tried to visualize how the tall, athletic boy was pacing around in his room. You are joking. Nope, you can Google it. I just might. Megan saw Jason standing by the window and smiled. Mission accomplished. He might not fully believe the story, but the seed of doubt was planted. He moved away from the window, and she saw him sitting down on his bed. Then he lay down, and he was no longer visible from her angle. She stood there for a few more seconds and walked back to her own bed, still hearing him breathing over the phone. Mission definitely accomplished, she thought, feeling proud of herself. Now, tell me really why your parents go out every Halloween and leave you alone, Jason said, trying to change the conversation. For a moment, Megan lingered and then started to laugh. Perhaps the poor boy was never going to leave his home again. That was not what she wanted. Even if teasing him with the local urban legend was fun, she would much rather have him out and about, walking with her to school. Almost had you, she said eventually, and snuggled her head deep in her soft pillow, staring at the slow turn of her ceiling fan. Not even close. You must work on your story. It's not my first time in a new town. There is always some sort of legend, Jason said, with relieved laughter in his voice. I will, and my parents met on Halloween night, so it's sort of their thing. My aunt is here to babysit. Fun times. She frowned at the thought of just another Halloween without being allowed outside. What are your plans? Jason sighed. Taking my baby sister trick-or-treating. Want to come with us? Everything inside her wanted to say yes. Though her parents give her pretty much all the freedom a teenage girl could have, they have one rule. No going outside after dark on Halloween night. It sucked. Big time. Sounds fun, but I'm not allowed. She interrupted the follow-up question. Don't ask why. Was just about to, he said. I will see you tomorrow. Sure. And remember, if you hear the siren, then run, Megan said. Whatever. Later that evening, Megan sat by her window and listened to her favorite band. Every now and then, she looked out of her window, watching the Halloween activity slowly winding down in the street below. Most of the trick-or-treating was done. Children, happy and high on sugar, returned home, clearly excited that the sugar rush was only about to start. Megan felt the void of never experiencing the joy of a Halloween night before. She shook the thought from her mind and tried to remind herself that her parents had their reasons. Then a smile returned to her face as she saw Jason and his sister walking up their driveway. His sister sported a princess costume, while he looked like a mixture between Dracula and a punk rocker. Megan giggled at the thought. For such a tough football type, Jason was a good old geek deep inside. Suddenly, she looked to the right and into the dark distance. There was an eeriness in the air. Then she heard it. A siren. Faint in the distance. For a second, she felt her chest tighten slightly. She knew it was only an urban legend, but for some reason, the sound made her feel anxious. She shook her head and focused again on the movement on the street. The sound did seem to spook anybody below. While the siren faded in the background, Megan saw Jason and his sister walking towards the front door. As they stepped out on the porch, their front door opened, and they were greeted by Jason's mom. Megan smiled at the warm embrace. Then the corners of her mouth churned somewhat mischievous as she saw that Jason had decided not to go into the house. Instead, he sat down on the middle step, leading up to the porch, playing with his phone. "Megan," he answered, and looked up towards her window. "Jason, please get inside." He stood up, then lingered a second. "Yeah, right. Come on, Megan. I told you this is not funny." "I am serious. Did you not hear the sirens?" "Nope, and nope." Jason shrugged. Megan conceded. "You are not fun," and heard Jason chuckle. "Anyhow, I am going to bed," she continued. And as she started to turn, her eyes caught a large silhouette slowly creeping up on Jason. "Jason, get in the house," she shouted, and pressed her eyes against the window, trying to make sense of the figure, now only a few feet away from Jason. "Megan, come on." "I am not joking. There is a man next to you. Jason." "This is not funny, any." Megan screamed as she saw a hand towering over Jason. He barely had a chance to fight back or scream. The figure totally engulfed him and dragged his body effortlessly into the shadows. "Please, please," Megan shouted as she turned around and rushed towards her door. She desperately tried to call the police while rushing down the stairs, but only managed to drop her phone in the process. There was no time to pick it up. Megan ran out of the front door, heard her aunt call from the living room, ignored it, and ran as fast as she could toward the street. And as she was about to cross the road, she froze. Void of energy, she slowly turned to her left. The hard sound of a siren next to her. Megan stood frozen, glaring down the street, and saw the car slowly appear from its shadowy tomb. There were no lights, just the siren. She stepped back as the car passed her by, windows open. "No, this can't be," she whispered, and felt the blood drain from her head when she saw her dad and mom sitting in the front seat and Jason screaming for help, tied in the back. "This can't be